Act 1. The city never forgot. Spider-Man is still swinging through New York, but the city doesn't look at him the same anymore. Not after London, not after Mysterio, not after that video. Because while the world forgot Peter Parker ever existed, it absolutely did not forget Spider-Man. That's the part that changes everything. Every screen in Times Square still replays the same accusation in people's heads. A dying man, a final message, a hero turned into a headline. Mysterio didn't just expose an identity before he died. He poisoned a reputation. And even though the spell erased Peter Parker from memory, it never erased the story that Spider-Man killed a hero. That lie is still alive. J. Jonah Jameson makes sure of it. Every broadcast keeps the same energy. Spider-Man isn't a misunderstood kid trying to help. He's a masked vigilante who escaped consequences. A threat the system failed to contain. And when enough people hear the same story every day, the city starts choosing sides. Some still believe in Spider-Man. They see the rescues, the fires, the people pulled from wreckage. But many others only see the accusation. And that division is exactly where Brand New Day begins. This version of Spider-Man has no Avengers to call. No Stark Tech safety net. No public defenders lining up to protect his image. MIT is gone. Friends are gone. Even the idea of Peter Parker is gone. All that's left is Spider-Man, operating in a city that can't decide whether to cheer or run when he shows up. That's not just isolation, that's danger. Because when a city starts believing a hero might be a killer, it doesn't wait for proof. It looks for enforcement. And that's when Frank Castle enters the conversation. Act 2. When the Punisher gets the wrong story. Frank Castle doesn't care about headlines. He cares about outcomes. Crime happens, people die, systems fail. And when they do, Frank Castle steps in to finish what the justice system won't. That has always been the Punisher's code. No mercy for criminals, no hesitation, no second chances. But there's a rule that never changes. Frank Castle does not kill innocents. That rule is what makes the situation terrifying. Because the moment Frank Castle believes Spider-Man is not innocent, the hunt is justified in his mind. The MCU has already re-established Frank Castle through the street-level world. His past is known. His family was taken from him by criminals who slipped through the cracks. His response was war. A one-man campaign built on bullets, tactics, and absolute conviction. Now place that man into a New York where Spider-Man is still publicly tied to Mysterio's death. A New York where anti-vigilante sentiment is growing. A New York where masked heroes are no longer celebrated but questioned. That's where perception becomes lethal. Because Frank Castle doesn't see Spider-Man as a symbol. He sees a masked figure operating above the law. Someone who fights criminals, causes collateral damage, and walked away from a body in London with the world watching. And if the wrong voices get to Frank first, Spider-Man doesn't get the benefit of the doubt. That's where the pressure starts coming from multiple directions. Media influence, political pressure, street-level fear. Someone doesn't even need to lie outright. All they need to do is frame Spider-Man as unchecked, dangerous, and responsible for deaths that were never his fault. That kind of narrative doesn't need proof. It just needs repetition. And Frank Castle listens when the pattern feels familiar. Act 3. The comic history that refuses to stay on the page. This isn't a new idea. Marvel has played this card before. In the comics, the Punisher has gone after Spider-Man more than once. Every time it starts the same way. Bad information, a manipulated narrative, a belief that Spider-Man crossed a line. Frank doesn't pull punches in those encounters. He doesn't hold back. He uses live ammunition. He plans the hunt like a military operation. Traps, kill zones, rooftop angles. Spider-Man survives those fights not because he's stronger, but because he refuses to fight back the same way. That's the key difference. Spider-Man doesn't want to beat Frank Castle. He wants to stop him without hurting him. Because beneath the armor and weapons, Peter knows Frank isn't evil. He's broken, driven by loss, acting on incomplete truth. That creates one of the most unbalanced fights in Marvel. Spider-Man has agility, spider sense, speed. Punisher has guns, tactics, relentless pursuit, and most importantly, Punisher does not stop. Webbing Frank up doesn't solve the problem. Calling the cops doesn't work when the cops might agree with Frank. Every escape just reinforces the idea that Spider-Man is guilty and running. That turns every encounter into psychological warfare. Spider-Man has to survive without proving Frank right, and that exact dynamic fits perfectly into Brand New Day's street-level direction. Even in the comics, these battles were less about victory and more about moral clarity. Peter never wanted to treat Frank like a villain, but he couldn't let him roam unchecked either. One misstep could mean a civilian caught in the crossfire. One hesitation could get Peter shot. In one run, Frank even admitted he respected Spider-Man, but that didn't mean he'd stop. Respect and trust weren't the same thing. Peter's refusal to escalate the violence becomes his biggest disadvantage. He fights to contain, not to win. Frank's worldview doesn't have room for redemption, only removal. And every time Peter hesitates, Frank sees it as guilt. Their fights feel like chess games played at full sprint, with lives on the line. In the shadows of those rooftops, one wrong move ends everything. And yet, Peter never gives up trying to reason with him. Even mid-fight, Peter's still talking, still hoping something will break through the wall Frank's built around himself. Because deep down, Peter doesn't see a killer. He sees a man still drowning in grief, a man who reminds him what loss can do. They aren't enemies in the traditional sense. They're reflections, distorted by circumstance, shaped by tragedy. Frank chooses vengeance. Peter chooses hope. And that difference defines every blow, every dodge, every web line. It's not a rivalry. It's a moral standoff in motion, one that has never truly ended. And Brand New Day might be the most explosive round yet. Act 4. Why this story fits. Brand New Day perfectly. Tom Holland has been clear about one thing. Brand New Day is about listening to fans, about pulling Spider-Man back to the streets, about grounding the character after years of multiversal chaos. This is what grounded actually looks like. Not aliens, not portals, not gods. A city that doesn't trust you anymore. A man with a rifle who thinks he's doing the right thing. This is the kind of conflict that doesn't need explosions to feel massive. It just needs tension. Add Daredevil into the equation, and the story gains another layer. Matt Murdock exists right in the middle of this moral collision. A lawyer who believes in justice. A vigilante who understands Frank's pain. Someone who knows Peter is telling the truth, but also knows how convincing Frank Castle can be when he's convinced himself. And then there's the bigger shadow looming over everything. New York politics. Anti-vigilante task forces. A mayor's office that would love nothing more than to see masked heroes tear each other apart while power consolidates quietly in the background. Because if Spider-Man and Punisher are fighting each other, they're not watching who's pulling the strings. That's how street-level wars are won. Act 5. How the fight actually plays out. This isn't a flashy first encounter. It's sudden. Spider-Man is already working a case. Something small. Gang movement. A lead connected to the growing criminal unrest across the city. The kind of investigation that feels routine. Then the spider sense hits. Not danger. Death. A sniper round tears through the space where Spider-Man's head was supposed to be. Concrete explodes behind him. No warning. No monologue. Just precision. Punisher doesn't announce himself. The chase that follows isn't cinematic in a clean way. It's frantic. Spider-Man swinging through tight alleyways. Frank repositioning with military efficiency. Every missed shot forcing Peter to stay moving. This isn't about capture. It's about pressure. Later, when they finally collide face to face, the conversation is short and brutal. Frank doesn't accuse. He states facts the way he believes them. A man died in London. Spider-Man was there. Spider-Man walked away. Peter doesn't get time to explain context. He barely gets time to breathe. The fight becomes close quarters. Spider sense against trained instincts. Webbing against knives. Disarming guns that keep reappearing from hidden holsters. Peter holds back. Frank doesn't. And every second that fight continues, the city becomes more dangerous for both of them. Because someone else is watching. Act 6. The bigger game behind the chaos. While Spider-Man is being hunted, New York's underworld is shifting. Scorpion is back. Tombstone is making moves. Boomerang adds chaos where structure used to exist. Smaller villains surface because the city feels unguarded. On top of that, reports point towards something stranger, a shapeshifter moving through the city, someone who can impersonate, misdirect, turn allies into suspects and suspects into weapons. That kind of threat thrives in confusion, and confusion is everywhere. Even Hulk enters the picture, not as a villain, but as a force that's been pushed too far. Manipulated rage, a reminder that even heroes can become weapons if the wrong hands guide them. Everything points to one truth. Spider-Man versus Punisher isn't the endgame. It's the distraction. Meanwhile, whispers ripple through the alleys of Hell's Kitchen. Daredevil is watching. He's seen this kind of escalation before. And he knows, if Punisher is moving, the balance has already shifted. At the same time, something is happening in Queens. A break-in at an Oscorp storage facility. Prototype tech stolen. No footage. No fingerprints. Some believe it's Felicia Hardy. Others believe she's trying to help Peter. The line is blurry. That's the point. A new gang calling themselves the Crimson Sons begins staking territory. They're organized, ruthless, and equipped with gear too advanced for the streets. Whispers say Mr. Negative is funding them from the shadows, using FEAST as a smokescreen to move supplies across boroughs. But then, it escalates again. A police precinct is attacked, not with bombs, with misdirection. Surveillance shows Spider-Man at the scene, but Peter was across the city. That footage? It's fake, but it's convincing. Too convincing. A hero proving innocence instead of saving the universe. A city that reflects real fear instead of blind admiration. A clash between two characters who both believe they're right. That's why the odds are so high. Because every piece is already in place, and when Spider-Man finally faces the Punisher in Brand New Day, it won't just be a fight. It'll be a statement. If this direction excites you, share the theory, drop thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more deep dives into where the MCU is really headed next.